today I am studying Korean all day long, all day, all night. This morning I started reading Korean, studying Korean before the crack of dawn. Right now I have one device open with a PDF. That is a book. I'm reading a book on one device. I have a physical, tangible, offline, actual book in hand. So I've got two books, and then I have software. By the way, if you're a fan of this show, if you support this show, we, that is 495, appreciate you. Thank you for your support. So, Korean, the language. I've read that it takes approximately 10,000 hours for a non-native speaker to become proficient on any serious level. So, admittedly, it took me a long time to become proficient on any level. That is, to remember chunks of data in terms of Korean. Different syntax, different rules of grammar, different sentence structures and patterns. It took a long time. I've been studying Korean off and on around the clock for 13 years. Now, that may seem like a long time. Keep in mind, there are people from South Korea who moved to the United States, and it's been 20 years, and they're still working on English. Well, it's the same with me. So I'm still working on Korean, and it's been 13 years. For non-native speakers of Korean, Korean's not an easy language to learn. Some people pick it up. Some people, you go on YouTube, and you look at Westerners, those who have traveled to South Korea, and they've watched K-drama and K-pop videos. Some folks, they pick it up, obviously faster than others. For me, it's been an intensive study. It's been a work in progress. So the one thing that I point out, the one thing that I point out to folks who want to learn Korean, if you're taking first year Korean, what a lot of textbooks don't tell you, and what a lot of Korean schools don't point out up front, is that there are 8 dialects of Korean. That's right. There are 8 dialects of Korean. And so given that that's an obscure, lesser known, arcane fact, I'm just saying that, like, it's there. You can look it up and you can see what it is that I'm referring to. Some people will never point that out to you. Some people don't even think about there being other dialects of Korean. So when you're learning Korean in that first year course or that first semester, let's just say the first semester, I would say that there's a 95+% chance that you're not going to hear anything from any student, any teacher in your course, instructor, professor. You're not going to hear anything about other dialects of Korean. It's just not pointed out. So what you're learning in that first semester of Korean, there are 7 other dialects. 7 other dialects of Korean. Okay, that's the first thing that I wanted to point out. The second thing that sometimes takes people years to figure out, I can fast track your study of the Korean language by pointing out number 2, as I just pointed out number 1. Number 2, the way that native speakers of Korean Romanize Hangul. Hangul is the name for the Korean language. So when you're looking at Korean script, Korean characters, Korean writing, when it's in Korean, when you're looking at Korean, that's Hangul. That's known as Hangul. So the way I would Romanize that, when I say Romanize, I mean taking what you see in Korean and using our alphabet system to represent that sound or that word. So Hangul, H-A-N is in November, G is in golf, U is in uniform, L is in Lima. Hangul. So Hangul, I just Romanized it for you by spelling it with our English letters. You'll see often a word in Korean that when the native speaker of Korean romanizes it for you, when they are thinking to themselves, okay, this is in Korean, I need for the English non-native speaker, that is the person who is studying Korean, to see what this word would look like if it were written with English letters. For some reason, different reasons, when that Korean native speaker transcribes, that is, translates the Korean into English, sometimes what you're seeing, the letters that you see that are the English letters now, they don't represent accurately the sounds that the Korean speaker is making. So in other words, and I'm just saying this out of respect for academia and because it's a fact, even your professor sometimes will transcribe something, that is, translate something from Korean into English, and when you're looking at the English, the sounds that your professor are speaking are not the same as what you see letter-wise in English. So, I'll give you an example. All right, so if you were to see the following letters, write this down if you have something to write with or something to type with. So, we're going to start with the phrase, is someone sitting here? Is someone sitting here? Okay, that's in English. So you'll see, for example, someone who speaks Korean, they'll write that, which is yogi nugu isoyo. Yogi nugu isoyo. They'll write Y-E-O-G-I for yogi. Y-E-O-G-I. Instead of just writing Y-O-G-I, yogi, they'll put the E in front of the O. That is, they will put the letter E, a letter E in front of the O. And then, isoyo, nugu will be N-U-G-U, N-U-G-U, and then isoyo might be spelled I-S-S-E-O-Y-O. Instead of just spelling it I-S-O-Y-O, isoyo, 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 they'll add extra letters sometimes. You don't pronounce both consonants. In other words, when I said isoyo, when the native speaker of Korean writes I-S-S, like two S's, and then the letter E, followed by O-Y-O, isoyo, instead of just writing I-S-O-Y-O, the native speaker of Korean, for whatever reason, will write extra other letters because that's what that person has been taught to do. I found that it's easier for me to just remove what I believe to be unnecessary letters so that in English, it sounds exactly the way that the speaker is speaking it, is saying it. Yogi, nugu, isoyo. It's that simple. So yogi, or even if they were to say it's not exactly yogi, maybe they'd say yagi, because depending on the dialect and how that O is pronounced, even if that O is supposed to be slightly dulled or muted a bit, right? It's not supposed to be like a sharp O, like yogi. Maybe someone will say it's supposed to be yagi, and that's the reason why E is in front of the O. Nonetheless, it'll still be understood if you say yogi nugu isoyo. So why not just write it Y-O-G-I, next word N-U-G-U, third word I-S-O-Y-O. Yogi nugu isoyo. Is someone sitting here? So my point is, in number 2, in this second piece of information that I'm sharing with you, you have to learn to listen very closely to what the native speaker of Korean is saying, and you have to dismiss a lot of times what you see in writing. Because, for example, the 3 words, yogi, nugu, isoyo, someone may try to pronounce a non-native speaker of Korean, that is the student who is non-native, who was not born speaking Korean or learning Korean. An English speaker who's learning Korean will see a word like isoyo that is written ISS and say to himself, herself, oh, well, okay, I get it. The I makes an E sound. So is, and then there's another S. Soyo. Is soyo. You don't say is soyo. There is no is soyo. It's isoyo. Isoyo. So why is the native speaker who is the teacher adding an extra S? Because the average non-native speaker, that is learner, English speaker, learner of Korean, will think that the double consonant, the 2 S's, are supposed to be pronounced one after another. You don't pronounce one after another. In Japanese, you would do that. But in Korean, you don't do that. In Japanese, you would say is soyo. You would make 2 S sounds. So it's very confusing. It can be very confusing to non-native speakers, that is, first-time learners of Korean, to see a double consonant. You have to learn that it's not a double consonant, that you're not pronouncing 2 S's. And you have to understand that there are certain translations, where there will be double consonants. And you're like, wait a second, hold up. I don't know why this person put 2 consonants back to back, but I'm only supposed to pronounce it. I'm only supposed to pronounce it as if it's 1. So it can be very confusing and very misleading in that way. And out of respect to the Korean instructor teacher, you just have to go along with it, because that person is doing his or her best to try to Romanize it for you and to put it into some type of format that you can understand. So I've had to literally go through books over a 13-year period, listen to the Korean speaker, and basically rewrite entire books. Like literally, this book, I've rewritten this book, because the way that it was written, and I'm not going to mention the book, the way that the book was written, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense the way that it was transcribed. And I've talked to my Korean friends, and they've told me that what I am saying is correct. So that's the problem with the Korean language in terms of non-native speakers trying to learn it for the first time. If there isn't someone there to explain that the book that you have isn't written, say, in an ideal way, because ideally certain letters shouldn't be present and shouldn't exist, but that person who wrote the book was trying to do the best that that person could do, the person might have a PhD. The person may have multiple degrees. Again, because there are 8 dialects of Korean, the problem with learning the Korean language for non-native speakers and why it's so difficult is because you have 8 different dialects, and for each one of those dialects, someone can completely, totally transcribe it, that is translated into English differently. So that's my point. Those are 2 points that I've made in less than 15 minutes. You're not going to find that information in 99% of the books that you read in the bookstore. This is my podcast explaining what took me it didn't take me exactly 13 years. I know this in my 13th year of studying Korean. I knew it a long time ago, but nonetheless, it took me years to figure that out. Literally, it took me years to figure that out. You just learned in 15 minutes what took me years to piece it together. Because though I was in Korean class, and I studied Korean formally in college, and I had PhDs as professors, I wasn't told that, what I just told you, what I just shared with you. I had to figure it out on my own, and with the help of Korean friends, and coming to understand on my own, independent of the classroom, that there are 8 dialects of Korean, and that each one can be translated differently by whoever it is who's doing the translation. I'm your boy, One Sir Grove. And again, in 15 minutes, I shared with you what you will not find in 99% of all Korean textbooks, Korean language textbooks that were ever written on the subject of the Korean language. That's not explained. Those items that I shared with you, those pieces of information that I shared with you, can seriously help fast track your proficiency in Korean, your learning of the Korean language. I've studied the open source information for the Defense Language Proficiency Test that the U.S. military uses. You can find open source files for DLPT, for the Defense Language Proficiency Test, DLPT, which if you're in the armed forces, you're in a position to be studying a particular language or a group of languages, and you're required to take the Defense Language Proficiency Test, DLPT, civilians, if you know where to look online, can glean some of that information. So I've had access to those files where I can see what is used to study for the DLPT. So people who are taking the DLPT, Defense Language Proficiency Test, some of those files are open source. They're available online. So I've studied online from the files of folks who have studied for and taken the Defense Language Proficiency Test, and I've never been in the U.S. Armed Forces. Nonetheless, as a civilian defense contractor, as a civilian government defense contractor studying Korean, I've still nonetheless had access to Defense Language Proficiency Test files, study materials. And when I've looked at that information and I've seen people in the armed forces who are studying, say, for Korean, a lot of times they don't know what I just shared with you because they're in the military and they're studying Korean for the first time, and it's never been pointed out to them that for each one of the 8 different dialects, each one of those dialects can be translated differently into English by whomever it is who's doing the translation. So in other words, when you have a textbook, you open it up, you thumb through it, that is, you skim through it, depending on who wrote that book, it can be translated totally differently than anybody else on the planet has ever translated it. So there are all these different translations of all these different dialects of Korean, and if you don't know it because you haven't studied the language for any considerable length of time, and there's no one to explain it to you, hey, look, here's a textbook. You're thinking it's written by this PhD, so it should be accurate, right? So this is Korean as you believe it to be. When you go to speak that Korean in that book and you try to translate it in the English Romanized version of it, the romanization of it, when you go to speak that or say that or utter that, pronounce that, when you try to use that sentence or that dialogue, you try to engage in dialogue with a native Korean speaker, they're going to wonder what the hell it is that you're saying. And then you point to it in the book and say, well, look, this is what it says. These are the English letters. And they'll look at it and say, oh, wow, what book is this? Huh, interesting. Yeah, you would never actually say that. You would never pronounce these 2 letters next to each other individually. You would never say is soyo. It's isoyo. It's just one S. And so then you're like, well, why is it written this way? And they're like, I don't know. Whoever wrote that, they're just trying their best. Interesting, huh? I've seen that time and time again, over and over again. So keep in mind, in less than 20 minutes, I've explained what could take individuals, and usually does, years to figure out. Why is there not a video other than the one that I just presented? Okay, because my podcast is turned into a video with the static image in the background. So this podcast is actually on YouTube. Why hasn't anyone else on YouTube who's taught Korean explained? Because I've watched over 1,000 videos on the subject, and I've never seen anyone explain what I'm explaining to you. Why isn't this taught? Like, I paid to take Korean as a second language in college, and it wasn't explained. This wasn't explained to me. No disrespect to my professor. People in America, Westerners who speak English, wherever there are English speakers in the world, if they were to know what it is that I'm sharing with you, it would expedite their process of learning the Korean language. So I have intermediate proficiency in Korean. I've done all the first year stuff and the second year stuff. And like I said, on the average, it takes something like 10,000 hours. Long time, man, to learn Korean. And that's from the book, like right out of the book. So I would recommend you use, depending on how you learn, if you're an audio learner, visual learner, I would recommend multiple different textbooks, multiple different phrase books, like 6 books, man. Just pick up like 6 books. Just go to your public library if you have a library card. And if there's a section on the Korean language, get 6 books. Go to your college university library. Get 6 different books, even 5. You can do it with 4, but I would recommend 6. Why? Because I want for you to see what I've seen, which is that each one of those books is going to most likely have what looks like an altogether, completely, totally different language. That's what I'm saying to you, is that even for one of the 8 dialects, for one of the 8 different dialects, you might find 6 different books for just the one dialect of Korean, where every book is a different English translation of the one dialect. Just the one dialect alone can have 10 different English translations or more. Because every time someone who speaks Korean translates just one of the dialects into English, it can be written a totally different way. It can be translated a totally different way into English than the other person or the next person translates it. So you've got to grasp that and wrap your mind around that and understand that. So for again, in conclusion, for each one of the 8 dialects, depending on who's transcribing, translating, writing it into English, it can be completely, totally different. And the other thing is, you'll have some professors, like the very first week, like the second day into my first semester of Korean as a second language, my professor said, this is day number 2. From tomorrow forward, we are not going to speak any English in this course. And you will have professors of languages who will try to persuade you and convince you that the easiest, fastest way to learn the language is full immersion and to never Romanize anything, like never transcribe anything from Hangul into English. Just learn to read Hangul and never write anything in Romanized letters. I would say to you, I disagree. I tried that. For some people that may work. For me, it didn't work. I had to I can read anything in Hangul. I don't know what everything means, but if you show me Hangul, if you show me a newspaper, if you show me something that's been typed in Hangul, I can sound it out phonetically. And a Korean speaker will say to me, yes, that is correct. That is how that sounds. You have said that well. That's actually pretty good. You actually did that very well. But I don't necessarily know what that word means. I can try to deduce it. I might not know because I'm only an intermediate level Korean language learner at this point. Right now, I'm using data sets to learn and imprint more vocabulary and more grammar, advanced grammar, intermediate to advanced grammar, because once you learn the vocabulary, you got to know the grammar. You have to know how the sentence structure is arranged. You have to understand the structure of sentences and different grammar rules. So it's an ongoing study. And if you just keep in mind those two things that I pointed out, and note that I explained that in under 30 minutes, and know that you're not probably going to hear that in the classroom, regardless of the college or university that you attend. Doesn't matter. You're probably not going to hear what I just shared with you. So this is a freebie, man. I'm not charging anyone for this information. And I encourage anyone who's listening and has a genuine, sincere interest in learning the Korean language to go on YouTube and try to find someone, another video, another broadcaster, podcaster, another student, another learner of the Korean language who has shared the same information, who has presented the same information. I'm sure there's someone out there. I've just never seen that information. Now, again, you can find out, obviously, about the different dialects of Korean. I mean, that's kind of a no-brainer. If you just type dialects of Korean, boom, it pops up. You can see that. There's more to it than that. What I'm saying is that chances are you're not going to find too many educators who point out that for each one of those 8 dialects, the person who is doing the translation may very well provide a completely altogether different translation than another educator who is a fluent native speaker of Korean. That's my point. I've never seen that. I'm guessing there's someone out of billions of people in the world, but I've never seen it. And because I didn't see it, that was an issue for me learning the Korean language, Korean as a second language, KSL, Korean as a second language. I'm your boy, OSGOE, One Sir Grove. If you like this podcast, I'm not asking you to like it. Notice I didn't say, please like it, please subscribe. I don't do that. Anyone who likes these podcasts of mine, these videos of mine, purely organic followers and subscribers. I've never asked anyone to like or subscribe. I am saying if you do and did like this podcast, hey man, thank you for your support. I appreciate that. And I'll continue to do more of these as I do my own independent research, studies, exploration, investigation of these types of topics, such as Korean as a second language, KSL. Thanks for tuning in.